you know, you're talking about the partition and between India and Pakistan, and you're saying that, you know, it was very bloody, and a lot of people don't know about that. I saw a few years ago that India was starting to be very far right. You know, there was a very far right president being
Right.
elected. Yeah, and he's very anti-Muslim. He's very, and I first of all I thought to myself, oh, he's very racist. He's like very racist. But then I kind of like read about the history and the animosity between the both groups, and then I was starting to say, okay, I think I get it a little bit more. I'm not saying he's a good guy, but I'm saying I think I get it, and the context is starting being lost when you read an article saying, you know, he doesn't want Muslims in the country or something like that, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I've also noticed like Indians being very against Islam. Possibly like they're one of the most anti-Islam nations, I think. And I think it has to do with like Pakistan and just the Muslim violence on Hindu and Sikh communities. I don't know much about partition because when my family talked about the founding of Pakistan, it was always like Pakistan was so glorious, like Pakistan is something to be proud of, but they never talk about the actual horrors of partition and what it meant for the Indian subcontinent. And I've been following Verified Spice Queen on Instagram, who's awesome, and I've learned a lot from her. I understand like where the sentiment comes from. While I may not agree with like, driving all Muslims out of the country, I understand the paranoia. Especially like since Muslims like tend to destroy like holy sites and temples of other religions. That's horrific, and that especially if you're like an ancient civilization or you're like a persecuted minority trying to preserve like your heritage.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. You know, I remember years back when I was in Istanbul, and we had a guide and he took us to a mosque which was once a church, and they just destroyed like everything, not everything, but most stuff Christian, and replacing it with something else. And it resonated with me, not because I'm religious for sure, but I'm sure you know about the whole story of Al-Aqsa and the Hebrew, the wall we have in Israel, in Jerusalem,
Western
and
Wall.
the Western Wall. Exactly. I heard a lot of Muslims like saying, you know, the whole idea of the Al-Aqsa Brigade, like, first of all, no Western understanding even what that means, and they don't understand the context.
Yeah.
And and they don't understand that there's like that they have a fear of us destroying Al-Aqsa,
Yeah.
and and it's like you're talking about paranoia. They are freaking paranoid. They are like they're going to destroy it and they're going to replace it with something else. First of all, let's get something clear. You destroyed something. You built something on
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
don't,
Well, it's
let's not conflate, right? I mean,
yeah.
and 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 something else that you said that I totally agree is that, or I can understand that usually the countries that suffer the most from Islam are
Hmm.
the most anti-Islam there is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've been to Sri Lanka, and they just had like a few years ago, like I think 10 or 20 years ago, they had a very aggressive terrorist group, a Muslim terrorist group, trying to infiltrate and destroy and murder as much as they can. And Israel helped in this situation. We helped in providing ammunition to Sri Lanka. This is why when we went to Sri Lanka, first of all, almost everybody we met, they were like, you're from Israel. Oh my God, we love you so much. Oh my God, thank you so much. You saved us from those barbaric people. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know if you can call them barbaric. And they were like, no, they are barbaric.
Yeah,
I was more, open-minded. They are. They were like, you don't understand. They told us, you don't understand what we've been through. And I guess I don't because, I have my own problems with Islam and some of the Muslims here in Israel, the whole idea of Muslim extremists. But they are like hard on nothing. They said no, nothing. And that kind of amazed me. I was shocked.
yeah, I can't blame them. Can't blame them. I try not to be like super anti-Islam, but it's really hard to like seeing all the destruction in the world that is because of Islam, and it's really hard to not take a stand against it. And that's also why like Mizrahi Jews are less receptive and less friendly generally towards Arabs than Ashkenazi Jews are, because Mizrahi Jews had to live as dhimmis under Arab and Muslim rule for centuries. So they are familiar with how much Islam hates Jews and other religions. They're familiar with the oppression and the destruction that happens when Muslims are the dominant group. And that's also where I think the disconnect comes from American Jews.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that a lot of people are saying it's because they're not living here in Israel and they don't know. And I'm saying yes, but it's not just that. And there is an historic kind of like, when as a Jew, even if you're not religious, you're holding a very big baggage with you. Like you have your own personal luggage, but you have your ethnic kind of like
Yeah.
luggage, which is like totally different from who you are and what you are, and but you have to accept it as part of yourself, like even if
Yeah.
it's just small. And it's kind of weird because my family, I'm part Egyptian, part Iranian, part Persian, and part Italian, and I was born in
Mm.
France. So I'm kind of like a very messy salad and not particularly tasty. And and my family, I know from like my grandfather, he was Egyptian, and his family was from Halab, and he came to Egypt, and he was talking, Arabic. He was talking Arabic till his last breath. He was working with them a lot of the time, but he always had that feeling that he couldn't really trust them, like truly trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a problem with that for a long time because he was working. He had cosmetics factory in Jerusalem, and almost everybody in his factory were Muslim. And still he would get hit by stones from extremist Muslims. Throwing stones at his car sometimes, and he was kind of living a double life of himself because he always loved being part of the Arab culture,
Yeah.
but he couldn't totally be assimilated or even just he felt he can't be like 100% okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why whenever I see like some anti-Zionist calling Mizrahis Arab Jews, like the audacity. That's so tone deaf. It's so like tell me you know nothing about history. It's not telling me you know nothing about history. Like
That's a good. That's good.
never mind the fact that like it's very insulting to call an indigenous group by the name of their colonizers.
Yeah, you're totally right. And the one other thing that really insults, I think, the intelligence, saying, okay, a lot of people are saying, before 48, Jews and Arabs were living peacefully in Palestine, and I'm like, well, that's a very nice fairy tale. It is not what happened at all. So I don't know. Like it's not that hard to just open Wikipedia these days. I
Yeah.
really truly don't understand. Like if we were living in a time that when you would had to go to a library, check out a book, get a library card, and and la di da, and that takes time. Of course, and you're reading that giant book, I would understand, but we're not.
Not like it's a blessing and a curse to have all this information at our fingertips. Like
Not,
peace for who? Muslim men? Yeah, but there was.
not, yeah, that's something that also I always noticed that every time that they were talking about Palestine, they were talking about it was always one-sided. I never hear people, there's a lot of people on the Jewish side, on the Israeli side, saying stuff that are one-sided, which is also wrong. But there are a lot of more people I hear on the Israeli side saying, let's talk,
Yeah.
let's have a talk, let's just have a disagreement, and it's okay, we can have. And the other side, it feels like they're playing the victim card, ravishing in the idea of we are the only people in the world that you're supposed to feel bad for, and nobody else.
Mm. That's a very Muslim mentality.
That kills me. I mean, part of me still believes, maybe naively, that we can, after reform, we cannot live with Gaza and this West Bank in the way that we are right now. But I do believe that maybe after reform, after education, after I don't know what, maybe we can live together. But right now, all I hear from that other side is, but we're suffering, but it's hard for us to be. And I mean, I understand, but if you cannot have that dialogue, that uh, ping pong, that you cannot get to anywhere, and I don't think they want to.
Yeah, it's because once like Hamas is dismantled and like once you resettle Palestinians so they're no longer refugees, then you can't bank on their suffering anymore. And that's just so sad. Why would you want the world to see you as perpetual victims? That's humiliating. Like refugees generally don't want to be refugees and they don't want to be known as just refugees. They want to make a life for themselves. But it seems like Palestinians are the exception.
There's an Israeli comedian talking about the situation right now, and he's saying, everybody's screaming about, oh, my house, I'm the key of my house, the Palestinians, yeah, he's saying, you know what my grandmother had? She had a palace in Morocco. She was living like a freaking queen, and she had to flee for her life and to move to Petah Tikva, which is a hellhole, but you don't hear her complaining, so shut the fuck up. I mean, really.
It's always Petah Tikva.
So we say free Petah Tikva.
I mean, I'd be pretty upset too if I lost my Moroccan palace and had to move to Petah Tikva.
I'm not agreeing totally, but I understand what he's saying because as someone who his grandma had to flee Egypt, had to lose everything she owned,
Mhm.
and she moved to France. She didn't even think about it. It wasn't like a Zionist idea of moving back to Israel. Like everybody's showing it, like it's the most ethnic cleansing of bringing everybody. And she
Mm.
didn't think that she was, because she was Egyptian, she was talking French too, because it was kind of like part of, you know, learning French in Egypt was very common. The first thing is she thought was to move to France. She never thought of moving to Israel. The only reason she moved to Israel was because my father moved to Israel. It's the only reason she moved to Israel.
Mm.
And I find that kind of amazing, kind of like, when you are comparing, and I don't love comparing, but when you are comparing what every other Jew, Mizrahi Jew, had to endure, and you're saying, Palestinians, after what they have, suffered from the Nakba, whether if you believe everything happened or not, I don't understand. Even if it's all true, even if it's all true, why, like you're saying, why still live in this victimhood mentality that is, how you said it, just very repressing and dehumanizing,
Mm. Humiliating.
humiliating? Is exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there are refugees from all over the world who had to resettle and build their lives up from the ground. Like refugees want to be part of the countries they resettle in. I don't see why Palestine should be the exception, especially when Mislahis suffered from their people the most, and
Yeah,
they still managed to like successfully build new lives for themselves. So why are you the exception?
I think that that's one of the points also that a lot of ex-Muslims from different countries, my friend from Afghanistan told me that he moved to Germany when he was 7 with his uncle, losing his entire family, losing his little brother, losing his parents. His uncle, treated him like his own son, and still treating him like his own son. And he's saying that we lost everything. Everybody threw us out from, the UN treated us like shit. And Germany accepted us in open arms. And he said, and you guys, you Palestinians have the audacity to throw it all away, to throw that kind of acceptance. People are accepting you, and you are saying no. No, we are not part of you. No, we only have one identity, one idea. This is, and it's kind of he's really angry about that kind of mentality, and I can
Mhm.
understand.
It's frustrating. They have a whole UN organization just for them. And where is that money going? Terrorism.
I mean, you don't have to have a PhD to understand the connection between how Hamas is one of the most, well-funded terrorist group, and
Yeah, they're
the amount of
Mhm.
money funded by UNRWA, and you're saying to yourself, well, they're always saying that's something else that bugs me. They're always saying there's not enough humanitarian food, there's not enough help, there's not enough. How many schools, how many hospitals are there in that small Gaza Strip built
Mhm.
there? There are like 40 or 50 hospitals. You know how much hospitals we have in that kind of square kilometer
Yeah,
ratio?
yeah.
No place. There is no reason to have so many hospitals and not smelling the fishiness out of it. You know, the whole idea of well, if you don't believe them, you must be a conservative. And I mean, no, I'm just being rational, I think, right?
Right.
I can be left wing and still saying, well, that stinks. That doesn't smell right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're a liberal and left wing. right? And you're saying that you are feeling ostracized kind of by your own
Yeah. I
group.
haven't really identified with the political spectrum in years. Like, I guess my beliefs could be considered liberal, but I don't really. I stopped seeing myself in terms of political like end of the spectrum years ago. Because I do feel ostracized. I was feeling ostracized like long before like this became like a trending topic. Because I saw how I was treated as an ex-Muslim. Um, and I saw like I always kind of knew that like I always kind of saw it that people are more loyal to being seen perceived as progressive rather than actually making some meaningful change in the world. Mm,
Um, when I was a kid, when my mother died, I was a geek, of course, and I saw that two-faced mentality that, everybody treated me like shit, in school. And when they heard my mother died, it was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, do you want to come and play some video games? And I was like inside, right? I was saying like, fuck you. And that kind of mentality of trying to show yourself virtuous, try to show yourself. And I thought, before the October 7th, I thought that I know how to read people and see that kind of two-facery up close. But then I saw what happened, and I saw that how they treat us after what happened. And I said to myself, wow, I am, like you said, I feel abandoned
mm-hmm,
by my own group.
mm-hmm.
Globally, I mean, um, I feel like I stood up for so many stuff that I'm I'm still standing up for, you know.
Yeah,
Why can't you be here for me?
exactly. Yeah, that's a common sentiment I've been seeing amongst Jews online, especially progressive left-leaning Jews. Like they supported everyone else's causes, but those people don't want to support Jews in turn.
I think that for you is kind of weird because you can say, they hate us, it's anti-Semitism, or it's just anti-Zionism or whatever. Why do they feel the need to kind of like not accept your personal experience as an ex-Muslim? Why shun you?
Hmm. I think perhaps they like romanticize Islam as like the cure to the ills of the Western world. Not realizing that Islam is actually just as bad as colonial Christianity, probably worse. Um, and it might also be the racism of low expectations because the vast majority of Muslims are like of color. Um,
Mm,
like they're like brown, you could say, Middle Eastern, South Asian, and where I live in the West, people are like maybe they're just like scared of being perceived as Islamophobic, so they call me Islamophobic.
it's kind of just amazing.
hmm.
It baffles
Like,
my mind.
I wish I had an answer for it, but I genuinely don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know why people are so like um, hypnotized by radical Islam or Islam in general, especially when they're white and they've never they don't come from Muslim families. Um, and it's very alarming to see like queer people, especially like romanticizing Islam. That's like Stockholm syndrome right there. I wish I had an answer. Like, I wish I could like pry into their heads and see what goes on in there because like, what kind of mental gymnastics do you have to go through to defend Islam of all religions as
Yeah,
a progressive queer person?
I think you hit it on the spot. I think that the whole idea of weaponizing words, weaponizing Islamophobia, and saying that people are scared. They are more scared to be shown as unliberal, unaccepting, than actually saying what they see and saying what it is. And you are like me, like a Jew, like an Israeli non. I'm white, yeah, but I'm not. I'm not American white, So we're not fitting to for their we're not fitting their narrative. And like I saw Musab Hassan Yusuf, the son of Hamas, the Green Prince, talking the other day with Abby Martinez, she's a white blonde American, and she's calling him a spy, an Israeli spy, a Zionist spy. And this is the kind of like you are so trying to show yourself as an not racist that you have become the worst kind of racist.
Yeah, exactly. They care more about how they are perceived, their image, like theories and like hypotheticals rather than like real human lives and real issues in the world. That's my biggest problem with modern Western leftism, I think. Um, it's just so like preoccupied with how something might appear, or how people might perceive something or perceive someone rather than like what's actually happening on the ground.
Listen, Roshan, I think we had like a very, 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 very interesting conversation. And I would just like to close the conversation with like one final kind of question. What kind of an optimistic view do you have for the future? Or personally, I mean personally, your future.
Oh, it's so idealistic, but I would
I'm
like to
sorry.
see. It's all good. I would like to see a return to indigenous cultures that Islam colonized. I would like to see like sovereignty and reclamation. That's my main concern, really. Like Middle Eastern welfare.
What about your personal life?
For me personally,
Yeah,
um, that I like um don't have to pretend to be Muslim anymore and um I build a better life for myself once I move out and I can live as who I am and I have friends who accept me for who I am and I can access the resources I need for my transition. Um and I make peace with who I am and my role in the world.
well, I'll say I'm into that. And I would say thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you, really, thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you as well.
sharing. I'm humbled. I'm saying I really, I had so much fun talking with you, and I
Yeah,
think this conversation was amazing.
absolutely. Like thank you to both of you. This was really cathartic and I really enjoyed getting to talk to you.
Likewise, likewise, I feel the same way.